Hey everyone, Barry McGuire here for Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Series, the Monday main event. It's July 26th. Today we're going to talk about just odd things that come across my desk as a real estate lawyer. As most of you know, I practice law on a daily basis, and I help lots of people buy and sell properties, and so things come up. And those come under the heading of what we call Tales from the Trench.
I wanted to do it at the same time.
Oh, do it together. 1, 2, 3.
Tales
from the Trenches.
Oh my goodness.
I love doing that. I used to love doing it at the Rain Group when I had the mic and I could stick my hands over the mic and go, Tales, etc.
Okay.
All right. Donna's harassing me here in the background. So
No
let's get to it. Well, I've got one tale that is very topical because I'm still working on it right now. And so it's a kind of a dual tale about the utility of getting a home inspection and how you have to negotiate and write clauses for clarity when you're buying a piece of property. So the background is that my client was looking to, he was retiring from his job, was getting a nice pension, loved to ski, loved to be in the mountains, wanted to be close to the mountains, and so is looking out around the Rocky Mountain House area in there for, kind of an acreage and something where you can be, fairly close to Rocky, but a little bit off the grid. And so found a place. Loved it. 3 acres, just a really nice looking house, nice yard, pretty good access to Rocky Mountain House, which is the closest town, sort of 5 or 6 minutes away. It was perfect in a lot of ways. Now, this was a property that was for sale by owner, the mythical FSBO, for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. And careful client that I have, he got himself a home inspector that he liked, a real old pro that had been at it for a long time. And so they went to do the home inspection. The homeowner insisted on tagging along and interrupting. Every time the inspector said anything to my client, he'd chime in with his own comments till finally my client said, listen, this is my inspection. It might be your house, but it's my inspection and I'm paying this guy and you're interrupting and it's not good. So please stop. The guy doesn't stop. Now the inspector has to tell him to kind of shut up, but he won't do it. Anyway, the inspection finally gets done and my client, who doesn't have much experience in these things, is told by her inspector that despite what the homeowner says, the electrical is not perfectly done. The plumbing has serious issues. A renovation that was done terribly, and the foundation under the renovation is collapsing. That there's some very bad planning, including a comment by the inspector that the reason that the ductwork for the heating runs kind of right in the middle of the house is because, in the inspector's opinion, this building was a sort of a summer place, a summer cottage, and was never designed for winter. And when the seller says, in answer to the question, so what's it like sitting in this corner or that corner in the winter? Answer being warm as toast, no problem. That answer is complete BS because the ducts will never bring heat to the outside walls of the house. So it was pretty obvious to my client that he couldn't buy this place, but he didn't really know because he had no expertise in that regard. He needed his inspector to really give him chapter and verse on what the issues were, because if he hadn't had an inspection, if he was just there listening to the very convincing homeowner, very convincing, he might have bought the place. It was so bad that the inspector actually called my client the next day. I just wanted to follow up. I really, really hope you're not buying that property.
Really?
I've never heard of an inspector ever doing that before. So, I mean, we kind of say, Wayne, don't we, that we always recommend that folks get a home inspection, whether it's a previously owned property or whether it's a new property, whether it's a condo or whether it's a lot block and plan. We say spend the, I don't know, $500 and get someone with a good reputation. What do you think about inspections? Is that something you do when you're buying?
100%. I'm not an expert in that stuff.
No.
I mean, unless of course, like you've got a background in general contracting, right? You're a carpenter or you're an electrician before, and you're the one doing the renovations. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what you're going to find is very similar to what, the home inspector is going to find. I mean, as far as your level of expertise. But if you're a new flipper, a new wholesale, new investor in general, always pay the $500.
Yeah.
Right? You never know. Because, like you said, just taking the word of the seller could have been a pretty costly electrical bill to get all that rewired. Or, I mean, and then the heating issue altogether. I mean, yeah, that's dodged a bullet.
Yeah, really did.
Sorry, I missed that. Did you buy it?
No, didn't buy it. Didn't buy it. Took the inspector's advice on the day that they did the inspection when the inspector said, listen, this place gets a failing grade with a big capital F. My client said, okay, I'm not buying. But the inspector was worried that he was actually going to buy, and not say. So he called back the next day because he was just so concerned about it all. All right. So,
I see a lot of new investors too, and I don't know about you and whether you hear this and on your side, but I see a lot of investors, they get so excited that they finally got a deal and then that they were able to negotiate, so low that sometimes they just like, just in order to get it closed really quickly because they want me to close fast, screw it, I won't do the inspection. You can get a lot of trouble. Yeah. That's a rookie mistake. Do you actually find a lot of flippers, like newer flippers, not doing inspections on your end?
By and large, people do seem to get a home inspection, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah.
Sometimes where I see the error creeping in is folks with experience who maybe have had, no issues with houses they bought. They might have had an inspection. They get a little overconfident. They might be now pretty good at the technicalities of buying and selling, but their expertise, if they're not doing fix and flips, where you learn, you have to learn a bunch of those things. Where they've got superficial expertise in making that call on the home inspection side of things, and they forego it for exactly the same reason. They're desperate that they won't miss a deal, and so they don't get the home inspection to their dismay. So folks.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, because that was going to be my kind of concluding remark.
I was going to say, especially when you're doing creative strategies, because that's even just one step further. A deal is one thing, but if you got a deal and you were able to negotiate seller financing on there, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I've done it. I've done it where I had an amazing deal and I'm like, I got to close this thing. If I push this out for another 2 weeks, this person's just going to back out.
Yeah.
Even though we have a signed document here, I just need to get this thing, signed on the dotted line. And I've done it. And in hindsight, I look back and I regret it because I could have really screwed up. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And especially with creative strategies, whether you're doing, VTBs, agreement for sales, highly, highly recommend getting that inspection done. Like roof, $8,000, $10,000. Furnace, $8,000, $10,000, right?
Yeah.
Electrical. I don't even know. I don't even know what it would cost. Like what that's, depending on what the issue would be. I just don't know electrical. Or
foundation. What about foundation?
Foundation. God.
Yeah.
Depending on how old.
Yeah.
You don't know.
So, folks, really, you are far better off always getting a home inspection. Good for you to go along with the home inspector, and I think it's usually about a 3 to 4 hour process. And a decent home inspector will be happy to have you come along and he'll talk as he does his inspection, and he'll tell you lots and lots. You'll get a written report, of course, but to have the inspector give you the verbal commentary, there'll be more to it than if you just get the written report and you never show up and never listen. So,
Sure.
Yeah, just thinking, other places where people think they don't need a home inspection. So we've talked about maybe a pressured deal. You're time pressured, so that's a reason not to let the time get to you. Don't avoid those diligent steps. But some other places where people think they don't have to get an inspection is if they're buying a condo or if they're buying new. If they're buying new. And so just because a place is new and just because it has an occupancy sticker and you think all the relevant permits, that doesn't mean that that this brand new property is completely perfect and pristine. Doesn't mean that at all.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots and lots and lots of builders out there. The market's kind of coming back. I do find a lot of problems with newer builders. If builders don't have a track record that you can check, if they've built a house or two, I do find that those builders kind of know how to work their way through the system, and they might have approval stickers, but your inspector can look at and show you lots of things pretty quickly on what isn't right in a brand new home that seems to have passed inspection.
Mm-hmm.
In that category as well are show homes. So show homes are often brand new homes that a developer or builder has used as a show home. And some of the things we see with those ones are that things that are on display are not necessarily hooked up and running. So for somebody to come through and say, well, if we build you this home, it'll have, this kind of furnace and this kind of air conditioning and this kind of sound system that's installed. Inspectors go through and they check to see that all those things are hooked up and actually working. Mm-hmm. I had one new show home purchase where there were 3 or 4 items that were just not connected. It wasn't that they weren't there, but they weren't working because they weren't connected, because they weren't being used in the regular the regular day-to-day life of that house. So new homes, got to get it then too.
Mm-hmm.
And then on condominiums, folks think that because it's a condominium, you don't need to inspect, but you should certainly at least get the interior inspected. And a solid inspector will glance around the complex and be able to give you at least a rough idea of whether or not there appears to be deferred maintenance. What does the roof look like? Does the shingling need to be redone? Are the fences falling down? Are the windows and doors older varieties that are reaching what would probably be the end of their normal lifespan? And so you get some information not only on the interior of the unit, which you have to know about, but you also at least get an idea of whether the condominium complex itself is being well managed to the extent that there isn't any apparent deferred maintenance, because that can be a big bill.
Yeah, because a lot of these things, they might not necessarily be on the minutes as, something that's on the horizon, right? He's going to notice that roof's got 5 years left, and maybe they haven't, when you go through the meeting minutes and what their plans are, they might not have even discussed it yet. And if it's not you have to plan for that kind of stuff, because you don't have to plan for it. You have to look at that to know that that's going to, all of these roofs are going to need to be done within the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. Do they have a healthy enough reserve fund in order to fix that? Right?
Yeah, condos are very tricky that way in terms of you not being the person who has to carry the load for a complex where they've just put off and put off and put off, doing what they need to do to keep the place in good shape. So let me see here. We got some questions here. George, George says, we had offers on two properties. We had under contract. We walked away on one property after having a house inspection done. The owner wouldn't budge on everything the house inspector found. Second property was practically useless. They missed some glaring issues, but our real estate agent picked up on a number of things and we ended up buying that property. Yes, so that is that's something else that the home inspection gives you, is the ability to say to the seller, all right, I've had a home inspection done. My inspector identifies these issues. It's going to cost me this amount of money to fix these, roughly. So we need to negotiate and take that into account in the pricing. You know, George's first seller wouldn't do a thing. And so, well, that's good intel for you, isn't it? Now you know that if you buy this property, the minute you close, it's not, $300,000. It's $315,000 because there's $15,000 worth of things that have to be fixed. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, folks. I don't know what's going on really with George's property.
Yeah.
So, there's George being a guy who has just gone through it and found a home inspection very valuable. Cost for a good home inspection to budget for. So what does it cost? I think it's in the area of about $500. Wayne, do you know what that is?
Yeah, anywhere from between 400 and 500. And George actually responded to this shortly after and said, depends on whether if you want cameras, infrared or sewer pipe scopes, the price can be around $1,000. Yeah, in Edmonton, I know it's a couple extra $100 and you can have the sewer scope. I always get my sewer scoped. Basically, they just put a snake through and it's got a camera and they can find any, to see if your sewer line has any holes in it, any cracks, especially with more mature neighborhoods. You get deep roots, long roots, they'll break right through into the sewer line. If it's on your side of the property, they have to dig out the whole line, repair it, replace it. It could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to replace something like that if it's on your side of the property. So for a couple $100, I always do that, especially when I'm doing more mature neighborhoods. Now, if it's on the city, if it's past the city line, then the city would be responsible for it. And I've had that happen where we scoped it. We found, I think it was like an 8-inch hole, or so it was 8 inches long, huge hole. And
wow.
It ended up being on the city side. So we just called the city and they said, yeah, sure, we'll have somebody out there in the next couple of weeks and we'll have that fixed. Within 3 days of us buying the house, they tore up the whole street and they had it all fixed and it was done. So $200, $300 it's definitely worth it. And then obviously infrared's going to determine whether there's any cold spots in the walls. So they'll know whether there's enough insulation. Also I believe they can check for moisture as well. Like it's a good indicator of moisture. So if there's any cracks in the foundation or anything along those lines, or if it just needs more insulation. So definitely worth it in my opinion. If you're going to be investing, budget $1,000 and get it done right. Yeah. Save you in the long run.
Wayne, I think that's good coaching on the mature neighborhood issue. Mm-hmm. There's many a property where the lovely mature trees in the neighborhood, the roots are just completely plugging both your part of the sewer line and as well the city part of the sewer line. And as much as the city will clean out theirs, the roots don't discriminate between whose side of the line they need to creep into. And so you have to clean out yours. And, seller will sometimes proudly say to you, I had my sewer lines roto-rooted and they're just working just like that. Mm-hmm. Well, great. But the reason they had to have the lines roto-rooted is because they had a bunch of roots in there, and roots once in come back. So mature neighborhoods, when I'm buying in a mature neighborhood, always get the lines scoped. And on the infrared side of it, camera side of it, again, if it's a mature neighborhood and it's an older home, insulation and vapor barrier and all of that sort of thing was pretty badly done in days gone by. There was the time when the gap between the studs, the 2x4 studs, not the 2x6 studs, just had shavings, wood shavings, which settle down, and there might be wood shavings in the bottom third of a wall and no insulation at all in the top 2/3. And so that's a very cold house.
I found a cold spot in a new property that I bought just a couple of years ago, and
really? Wow.
yeah, there was a cold spot, and called up the builder, and the builder was totally cool about it. They sent out an insulation company. They sprayed some foam in the area. And no, it was underneath the joist in the basement, so they found it there, and they just sprayed it in there and covered the problem. So,
okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to make it a long story, but we were having a mold issue because there was a cold spot, and mold, once it was melting, the condensation and the moisture was causing mold. So we were trying to figure out the problem and ended up solving it pretty quickly. So.
Well, that's good. So there's there's an example, folks, of real life. I've had it with the sewer roots myself. So home inspection, we always recommend it. And mature neighborhoods, spend a few $100 extra to get your lines scoped to see if there are roots or holes or leaks, and get the infrared camera and other sort of extras you have to do inside to get a better handle on moisture and cold spots and that sort of thing inside. Whew. Wow.
This is the stuff that actually keeps investors up at night. It's not the tenants in the toilets. It's the mold. It's the, what do you mean there's a root going through the sewer line? It's all the random stuff within the property and making sure that it functions properly. That's the stuff that really gives us the most stress. It's not really the tenants. I find some of my biggest problems are just the house itself, and they're like, oh God, I wish I would have done that before. Oh God, I wish I would have cleaned the gutters more often.
Mm-hmm. Wish I would have made sure I had a positive grade for the water, or the dirt against the house, so it all flows away.
Rainfall, yeah. Oh yeah. Man, that's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
Yeah. Well, that just is just a little sideline before we get into the next part of this tale, because my client didn't buy the house that we're talking about out towards Rocky Mountain House, but worked on another one that we just kind of sorted out the last details today. So this is a very hot and current tale.
Ooh.
But for the comment on, these are the kinds of things that keep us up. Maybe not the tenants, but the diligence side of things. I think that is very apropos, and people spend so much time worrying about their tenants. And of course, you have to do a good job on your tenants. Learn how to accomplish great diligence on your tenants, and don't put one in if it's not the right one. And but those other things do bite us a lot. And so I think that's good coaching from Wayne on that part. Okay, so second part of this tale. Whew. I didn't know that home inspections would get us going like this, but there's a lot to say about home inspections.
Yeah, for sure.
So second part of the tale. So my client says, all right, I'm not buying the house from this guy who's lied about everything just through his teeth. I got another house out, same area. This one is, it's a house that has it's also very pretty, not quite as well located. A better house all around, more room. Construction seemed to be better. Had a really nice deck all around it. And so client looks at it. There's a hot tub. The seller has a hot tub. And the seller says that we write the offer to say that the client writes the offer with the realtor to say that they want the hot tub and what they call the spa package. And yes, the seller comes back and says, well, I'm taking my hot tub. I love my hot tub. I'm taking it to my new place. And what do you mean by the spa package? We're going to take our spa package with us. And so what my client meant by the spa package is all of the chemicals and the cleaners and the hoses and all of the things that you need to properly maintain your hot tub, which were in a nice little cabinet right beside the hot tub. They opened it up. There's all the stuff. That was the spa package. Seller goes, well, I don't really care about those so much. What I think the spa package is the electrical cable that goes from the controls on the hot tub to a sub panel, a sub electrical panel on the side of the house. And I want to take that with me. So they had a huge argument about what was staying and what was going. What was staying and what was going. And in the end, they kept those words in the contract, spa package, having had an argument about it, but without having clarified it. That's number one.
Oof.
Number two, that was actually the smaller one. Number two, the previous owners, not these folks who were selling, the previous owners had put an addition on the house, a nice big new master bedroom, which was beautiful and seemed to be well constructed, but they built it over the existing septic tank that fed a septic field. So the inspector says, well, you can't be doing that. That's not up to code and it's not safe. And so the negotiation is, all right, Mr. Seller, you have to put in, you have to install and show us permits for a new septic tank. My client had the, apart from her regular home inspector who had helped her on the previous one, she'd had a septic company out of Red Deer show up and take a look. And the septic company told our client, said, listen, you got to get a new septic tank in there. They also tested the water, which was fine and way better than the sulfur-ridden water at the other place. So my client was quite happy about that part. So the contract is written to say that there will be the seller's responsibility to install a new septic tank and provide permits, and there'll be a $15,000 holdback, and that's all it said. So they talked to me in the midst of the negotiations, and I said, well, the spa package thing doesn't look very clear to me. And I see that there's a holdback, and I really have trouble with holdbacks, folks. I want stuff to be done on the closing day and inspected, and I don't want to have to chase a seller after closing to get them to do stuff. And the reason I don't like that is because it's very difficult to define in some cases what has to be done, to say who is going to be the judge of whether or not the work is properly done, and then to say and negotiate what will happen if it isn't properly done. So I said, I would really like you to write the clause so that it says, if the seller hasn't completed the new septic tank installation within 1 day of closing, then the buyer's holdback of $15,000 will be released to the buyer. So we're going to have the $15,000. And the reason I wanted it to say 1 day after closing is because peripherally, lenders take issue with any kind of holdback issue or any rebate issue. They want to say things like, oh, well, if there's, if you've got a holdback of $15,000, then effectively you've got a price reduction. So we're gonna lop the price down by $15,000 and only give you financing based on whatever you were offering minus the holdback, which means 3/4 of the holdback price doesn't get financed if they're doing a conventional mortgage, roughly 3/4. So negotiation back and forth. Seller didn't like that. Seller wanted 1 month after closing to take care of the septic. In the end, they didn't do anything about it. The realtor and my client put forward some amendments that tried to deal with it. The seller rejected those. And so all it says is that there'll be a $15,000 holdback and the seller has to do the work and provide permits. Now it's ready to close in the next day or so. And I talk to my client and I go, okay, well, what's the update? He said, well, we're still arguing about the spa package. What about the septic? Well, I don't know about the septic. So I say to the seller lawyer, all right, you need to tell me about the septic. I need to know that it has been installed. I need to know that it's been paid for. I need to know that it's been inspected and approved. He goes, well, the contract doesn't say that. The contract says that our clients will do the fix-up and provide permits. And so he sent me a copy of the approved permit application. And I went to myself, I'm going, that's what the contract says. How much can I force him to, how much can I force him on this thing? So, to make a quite a long story short on this aspect of it, in the end, we managed to get from the seller's lawyer the application for the permit, the approved permit from the inspection, the approved permit application from the inspection company. And then we got the septic installer to confirm that, yes, he'd done it, and yes, he'd been paid, and that the inspection was scheduled for the day before closing. And on the day of closing, we were able to see that there was a fully approved inspection report. Sounds good, right? My client says, well, what about decommissioning the old septic tank? I'm going, decommissioning? I didn't hear anything about decommissioning the old septic tank. He goes, oh yeah, my first inspector, not my house inspector, but my septic inspector, said that what needs to happen is that the old septic tank has to either be filled with crushed gravel, and then the septic enclosure, and then the lid put back on the septic tank, and then where the septic is completely filled with crushed, or they have to actually take a backhoe and break up the concrete septic and fill the hole with crushed gravel and finish it off. And that's because of who knows. There are reasons why the inspector thought it had to be done. Mm-hmm. He says, Barry, has that been done? And I'm going, I don't know. I phoned the inspector. They go, it's not a requirement of the rules, the Alberta Safety Code rules around septic tanks. My client. But the inspector told me it was required. And so now we're having a dogfight about it. Long story short, although it didn't say on the inspection form, and although it didn't say from anything that the installer provided, turns out the installer did exactly that. He took care of the decommissioning of the septic, but it was like pulling teeth to get the information. So, my point in all of this, one last thing. The hot tub sits on a platform. It's a giant hot tub, and it's a big platform where there's, I think, probably 2 feet more in space going all around the hot tub, so you can step up. It's like 2 feet off the ground, and then there's a 2 foot lip. So this platform on which the hot tub sits is about 16 or 18 feet square, and it's beautifully done to match the beautiful deck. And the seller says, we're taking the hot tub platform. Really? It's a fixture. It's part of matches the deck. They go, well, if we got 6 husky guys, we could lift it up and carry it away. My client says, I never even thought of asking that the hot tub platform be included in what's staying with the property. Long story short on that, we kicked up enough of a fuss that the seller left the wiring that went from the controls in the hot tub to the sub panel, and also left the sub panel. They left the hot tub platform, which was just a monster, and really should have stayed. We found out, despite the way the contract was written, that the septic was installed, paid for, inspected, and that the old septic had been decommissioned. But all of that was done by me at great expense to the buyer, because it took hours and hours and hours of calling an inspector here and checking with someone there and talking to the seller lawyer. So the point of all this is that when you are having issues with a seller, you have to really, really concentrate on making sure that your issues are adequately dealt with in your offer to your satisfaction, that you've solved the negotiating trouble that you've been having, that you've made sure that what you want is written clearly in the contract, and that you are getting what you believe you need and what you want, or you suffer the consequences of not dealing with it or having inadequate wording where, I hate to say it, but the extra cost to my client, which he was happy to pay because he was really concerned about all this, was an extra $2,000 in legal fees. That's 4 hours of me spending time sorting these things because my staff, it's just not what they do. I have to solve these problems. So folks, to save yourself money, spend time on your contract and make sure that the things that you need and things that you want and the extra little items are really carefully described. And, that's something you can get in touch with me on. If you need help drafting a clause, you can pop me a Facebook message or send an email to me at bmcguire@fieldlaw.com, bmcguire@fieldlaw.com. And, I always have time for you to at least start the conversation and answer a question. If you need further help, maybe you get a bill, but I never send you a bill just to have an initial conversation about, Barry, do I have a problem here or am I okay? So that was a thing that finished up today at 1:30. At 1:30, I got the last bit of information that said all of those things were solved and my client can now close the property. And he is so happy.
Barry, I got a question.
Yeah.
How many, let's break this down into a percentage. How many real estate deals go just smooth? No problems.
I would say it's actually a pretty good percentage that goes smooth.
Really?
It is. I would say probably 75% goes smoothly.
So I'm just one of the unlucky buggers who just happens to always land in the other 25.
So my practice, Wayne, is a mixture of creative deals and kind of normal mom and pop deals.
Yes.
Just moving into their new home.
Okay.
And I would say on the creative side, because that 75% number takes into account all of my deals.
Mm-hmm.
I would say on creative deals, we're probably up around the 50% mark of deals that just need extra work and there are extra issues that show up. It's not all of them. So if you're experiencing on all of yours, then you are the unlucky SOB that has the bad deals.
It just seems like every deal I'm a part of or any deal that I'm helping people, well, I guess if people are coming to me, then they probably have a problem. But it seems like every deal I've ever analyzed or been a part of, it's just been, and it's little things like financing, last minute financing, or last minute, hey, I'm taking whatever the hell or heck that was, that part of that hot tub lip or whatever, just dumb things that people throw in that complicate things. I was curious because I can't imagine what it's like dealing, because I have enough of my own headaches on my own deals. You deal with everyone's deals for the last 45 years. Like, why are you always smiling?
You're right. You're right. For the deals that are going along smoothly, my very competent staff take care of most of the things that need to be taken care of. My job is to meet with clients and sign documents and do that sort of thing. But overall, I don't put near as much time into many of my deals that I do into these ones that are going sideways. And so most of my day is spent problem solving. And so how do I do it? Well, I don't know. I like to do it. I'm good at doing it. We got for this deal that we were talking about today with the hot tub and the septic, there were 4 issues to take care of, and in the end, they were all resolved to my client's satisfaction. So, it's what I like to do. It's why they pay me the big bucks, Wayne. Solving problems.
I asked
solving problems and working my way through stuff. So
Wayne's doing a lot of creative stuff.
Yes.
Creative brings in-
Even my mom and pops, Donna. My mom and pops are just, oh god, just.
What's the common denominator here, Wayne?
It's, yeah,
It's,
I need therapy.
well, listen,
Yeah, I'm one of the few people. The reason I ask is I'm one of the few people that's listened to every single Tales from the Trenches. That was my early education,
Right.
and I'm like, oh God, how does Barry deal with this every day?
well, it's been fertile ground for examples and teaching material over the years. There's nothing like Tales from the Trenches to let people know what can go wrong and what they have to do. So yeah, anybody who's listening, if you haven't gone to my website, barrymcguire.ca or investorlawyer.ca, if you haven't gone on there and listened to, okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Tales from the Trenches.
Okay, guys.
If you haven't done that, then do it. I mean, it's been on there for 20 years. There's story after story after story, great teaching stories about clients who stepped in a big pile of steaming doo-doo and how they got out of that. So
it was before podcasts were a thing, and I would download them on a jump drive and I'd listen to them while I was driving. Yeah, it's good stuff in there.
those are good.
You know what? You may never need it, but it's good to have it in the back of your head, because like things like this,
Yeah.
you never know, and it's good to have that little nugget just to make you second guess, doing a deal or asking the additional questions.
Well, let's move over to a tale that's around mortgaging and the situation where a homeowner wants to mortgage his property, but it's not just a property, it's a number of properties. So it's 2 or more properties. As long as it's 2 or more, it comes under the heading of what you might call blanket mortgages. So the homeowner needs money. It's got at least a couple of properties. He finds a lender who will give him a mortgage, but the lender says, okay, for security, I want to put this one mortgage on all your properties. So that can be 2 properties or 3 or 4. And so that's a condition of me lending, is I want to put this mortgage on your properties. And the homeowner goes, well, for what you're lending me, the overall loan to value ratio on my 3 properties, let's say it's 3 properties as an example. Mm-hmm. My overall loan to value ratio is only 60%. So, you're really well covered. Why don't we just make do with 2 properties, and then the loan to value will be up around 80%. No, says the lender, it's got to be a blanket mortgage. Okay, fine. So that's the basis on which the mortgage goes ahead. And so the homeowner gets his money, the lender puts the blanket mortgage. So this is it's one mortgage that gets registered against all 3 properties.
Okay.
By and by, the homeowner decides he wants to sell a property, And so he cuts his deal with his new buyer. They negotiate back and forth. And in the end, he has an unconditional sale to a new buyer for one of the 3 properties. And so gives it to his lawyer, Barry. And Barry, as the seller's lawyer, writes to the lender and says, hi, I'm representing the homeowner here, and he's selling a property, and so I need a payout statement for this mortgage. Now, let's say the loan is $300,000, and the value of the equity in the properties was, probably $400,000 or $500,000. So I write to the lender, and the lender writes back to me, and he says, great. Well, he just put that mortgage on last year. And so the payout of that mortgage, that $300,000 mortgage, is $298,000. It's $298,000. So that's what I need in order to give you a discharge. I know that the homeowner is only going to get he thinks he's going to get about $100,000 cash out of this sale of the one of the three properties. He's kind of figured out his numbers. He took his blanket mortgage, he divided it in three in his own mind, and he thinks, if he gives this his lender $100,000, he'll be able to get a discharge of the blanket mortgage from that property. And the lender goes, no, there's no, and here are the key words, folks. There are no partial discharge provisions in this mortgage. In other words, there's nothing to allow for the homeowner perhaps wanting to sell one property and not selling all three at a time. If he's selling all three, he'd get enough money to pay off his blanket mortgage. But if he's selling one and thinks he only has to pay like a third of the mortgage, nope. Mortgages have to specifically say what it will take in order to get a partial discharge of the property. And that's when I see that when there's seller financing or blanket financing, that's one that gets forgotten all the time. So if you're ever in a situation of negotiating a blanket mortgage, you have to negotiate partial discharge provisions. Lots of times that comes from private lenders, but you can also negotiate a blanket mortgage with with TD Bank or RBC. They will listen to you on those, but you have to, when you're working on your mortgage commitment, you have to negotiate what it will take to sell a property. How much do you have to give to a lender? It's very common for a lender to say that they want all of the net sale proceeds from the sale. So they say, well, if you're selling for $400,000, we want you to pay your realtor, you can pay your commission, you can pay your lawyer's reasonable legal fees, you can pay up the taxes which are outstanding, and then all of the rest of the net sale proceeds come to us. And if that is enough to pay off 2/3 of the loan, the lender doesn't care. That's what they say. So you have to specifically negotiate partial discharge provisions. And the second thing is this is a bit of a reverse, but sort of similar. If you happen to be the lender, let's say you're the lender and you are a second position lender. Let's say there's two mortgages on the property and you're the one who's the second mortgage lender. And the seller wants to sell. The person, the lender who's in the first position has the ability to take every penny of the net sale proceeds until his loan is paid out in full. Unless the loans are negotiated otherwise, and they almost never are. If you think you're going to share in getting some of the sale proceeds, unless your mortgage says that, which they almost never do, the first mortgage lender can take every penny until he's fully paid out. Just ran into that the other day where my second mortgage lender thought they were going to share in sale proceeds, and it's a little more complicated than that. But the essence of the tale is, if you're a second mortgage lender, you might wait to get your money until the second or third property sell. So that's a little note on blanket mortgages and the absolute need to negotiate the right to get a partial discharge if you want to sell one of the properties that's covered by a blanket mortgage. So that's that one. Phew. All right. What do I got else here? Let me look. Got a bunch of them. Payout penalties. Geez, we're on mortgages, but they're coming up. Client last month who came to see me or contacted me, phoned actually in tears because they had just purchased a property 6 months ago, had an absolutely stellar interest rate. So the interest rate isn't very high. It's like, I think at the time it was maybe 2.25%. It was so good, and they were so confident they were keeping the property forever that they signed up for a 7-year term on their mortgage. 7-year term. So, I mean, what we see mostly
2.25?
2.25
for 7 years.
Yeah, which is why they loved it.
Yeah, hell yeah,
yeah, hell yeah. So they're going, we're never going to sell this property. This will be great. It's going to pay off so fast. And what happened was that 6 months after they bought, something came up in their lives that they had to sell. They had to sell. So it's a 7-year fixed term mortgage. And those are the mortgages where the lender can really nail you. They can really nail you. I think the payout penalty was in the range of $15,000 or $16,000. Lenders, when you're looking to do a payout penalty, they charge you on a fixed rate, fixed term mortgage. They usually charge you a 3-month interest penalty or something called the interest rate differential, whichever is higher. And when the lender talks about, interest rate differential, Wayne, do you know what that is? Could you tell folks what that is?
Yes, but if Sean's on here, he's gonna wave us. From my understanding, is that every lender calculates it differently.
Yes, I think so.
What the bank wants, what the bank is owed, essentially. If you signed up for 7 years and you promised that you were going to fulfill that 7-year commitment, and then you cancel in 6 months, they want essentially what's owed. So they're going to take whatever losses they have. So what I believe is that they take the oh, now I'm going to butcher it. They take whatever the rate is today, and then the difference between the rate that they gave you, and you pay the interest on that over the period of time. So
that's pretty close. So it's the larger of a 3-month interest penalty or the interest rate differential, which is, you're right, it's the difference between what they can lend it out today at, and you know, I saw a mortgage the other day for 1.29%. So as much as 2.25 looks great, maybe the lender gets his money back and he can only lend it out at 1.29. But the kicker in there, the real kicker, is that it's not based on the interest rate in your mortgage that you got as a special deal. It's often based on the lender's posted rate, which can be 3 points higher. So it might be the difference between 5.25 and 1.29. In any event, it was
the remainder of the term
for the 7 years.
For
the 7 years. And so you have to understand when you're signing up for a fixed term closed mortgage that you can really get smacked on payout penalties if by chance you're forced to sell. So if you keep it for 7 years, good for you. It's probably going to work out great for you. But if you have to sell, and I just talked to mortgage brokers about this in one of the referrer posts that I do for realtors and mortgage brokers. They were talking about the percentage of people who sign up for a 5-year term and then have to pay out before the 5 years is up for some reason. They, obviously they sell the house or they have to move. Something's forcing them. It was a huge percentage. So it was like, I can't remember the percentage, but it was a big percentage of people who think they're always going to have this house for 5 years, and then they don't, and then they have that big payout penalty. So folks, when you're thinking of signing up for a mortgage and you're thinking of getting one of the long-term mortgages, the fixed term closed mortgages, think hard about whether or not you're ever going to have to sell that property, because the payout penalties will be enormous. I know that's hard to do. Nobody expects that, you're going to get a job transfer, but maybe if your company is the kind of company that moves people around, you should think about that. If you're in the military, I understand that, people can be posted really anywhere at whim. So maybe the military can't move you around every 3 months, but they certainly have the right to move you. So try and think hard when you're signing up for a long-term mortgage that's closed that might have one of those giant payout penalties. Very important for you. All right. Any questions?
I want to know what happened with this person. My ears perked up. You know me, Barry. My ears perked up when I heard that problem. So what happened with that client?
What happened was that they had to sell, the circumstance in their life was that there was a, so let me just think on that. That was just a little while ago. It wasn't divorce. No, it was a job transfer. Job transfer. And lots of companies in their relocation plans would pay you for that, but his company wasn't. So he had like a $15,000, I think it was 15 grand payout penalty that he definitely was not factoring into how much money he was going to get from his Edmonton sale to move off to his, I think he was going to New Brunswick, where, by the way, folks, prices are through the roof. And if you thought you were going to pick up something for a third of what it might cost in Edmonton or a tenth of what it would cost in Ontario or BC, think again. Prices are going through the roof with lots of bidding and over list offers and unconditional offers. That's what I'm hearing a lot about in hot markets is people are writing unconditional offers, not conditional on financing, not conditional on inspection, closing in 2 weeks, and it's a recipe for disaster, I tell you. So,
Barry, I'm offended.
Are you?
I am offended that you didn't tell them to call your good buddy Wayne.
Well, Wayne,
I could have helped them save $15,000.
Yes, you could have. Using what, Wayne? What would you have done?
I would have used an agreement for sale strategy, which that is exactly what I target my business towards for agreement for sales. That is a very easy problem to solve. Sorry, it's easy to solve, and it helps people out. But obviously, you're in a position where conflict.
I got to be a little careful about that. Although, I do. If I think there's some help to be had, I do kind of offer that and maybe suggest some things like that. Yeah. But let's check questions here. We're coming close to 6 o'clock. What does Will say here?
Well, George had a question. Could they not have ported their mortgage?
Ported their mortgage. Some lenders do offer that, and a ported mortgage is the ability to take the terms of your existing mortgage and move it off to another property. You don't get to take the exact mortgage, but you get to take the terms, which would have done the trick. I don't know. I knew they were selling here, and I knew they had this problem. I don't know what the background was on the other end. That's a very good comment. That might have solved the problem for them.
For sure.
Wayne, let's pop up some questions. What does Will say? Topic of payout penalties. Am I right to think that the interest rate differential, I think that's what he means with IRD, varies based on the time left in the term, but the 3-month interest penalty varies based on the amount left owing on the mortgage and not on the time left in the term? I think that's right, Will. I think you're correct in your understanding of how that works. So that is an easy one. If Sean's on, he can tell me whether I'm talking through or observing through my hat, I guess.
I believe that's it for questions.
Any more questions? Well, I got a whole list of other things we could have talked about here. Small condos, delayed closings. Can condominium corporations prohibit rentals? They can only take the deposit, right? And your favorite, Wayne, size matters.
What?
You gotta be so careful.
I know, Donna. I know.
I even wrote my own secret tale, but I'll save it for the future. From a literal trick.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh.
But
all right.
Yeah, looks like we're running out of time though. But hey, I had a question.
Yes.
What's this with Donna doing a poll the other day about rapid cash program coming this fall, live or virtual, or live and virtual?
Well, that is Donna mulling over what she's going to do as the producer of our focus workshops. So we did nothing but live focus workshops. Then COVID arrives. We did nothing but virtual focus workshops, and now we're out of COVID. Cross your fingers. And we're trying to say to ourselves, we're really, really looking forward to doing more focus workshops, because you and I both know and believe, Wayne, that education is the key to success in creative real estate. And really, to get education, at least for the stuff we teach, you got to take a focus workshop.
Yeah.
You got to either buy a home study kit or you got to show up at an event. So that's what you need to do for success, I believe. So Don and I are saying to ourselves, okay, if we're out of COVID, can we do a live event? Maybe people still don't want to come to live events. Maybe they want to.
The polls say otherwise, unanimously. People are interested in a live and a virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
So,
what is
luckily, I think
live and it would be streaming as well.
I think that's the way we do it. It'd be live and then streamed at the same time.
Absolutely.
So, the beauty of the live event, I think, is you've been to events, Wayne. We set it up so that people show up early and get a really beautiful catered breakfast, not tea and toast. You get a solid breakfast, you bring it in, you sit down at your table, you get to meet people, you get to start establishing and networking relationships, great coffee break stuff, another fabulous lunch. And all of that time, you're getting to know people and getting to establish connections. And that has been a hallmark of success for the focus workshops. One of the reasons I really like the live events, it's just closer and tighter, and I feel it's a better way to do it. Nothing wrong with virtual things. Lots of people take them and love them, and we're going to stream it. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, and it's looking like it's going to be a combo.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're right. I prefer live events as well. I mean, obviously afterwards as well, taking it, to the pub or whatever afterwards, the big meetups afterwards, and having everybody discussing things and different opportunities and ideas and continuing conversations that we're having. I mean, I find that to be the best.
Yeah.
I mean, the event's really good too. Don't get me wrong.
No, but that's part of the event.
Afterwards.
It's part of the event. You know how we go. We answer questions throughout the event. And then we finish at 5 o'clock and we answer everybody's questions, which usually takes another hour. Yeah. And then just about when we're ready to go, folks, I always forget that Wayne is sitting in the weeds with his own list of questions. And then we talk about all Wayne's questions. And then we go off for dinner or go to the pub. And everybody comes along because we're having such a good time. And we've talked real estate all day long. And now we're going into, another 2 or 3 hours of talking real estate. So that's how interesting and valuable it is. Mm-hmm. Donna?
We're taking August off.
Oh, Donna says in order to do a bang up job in September.
No, it's not in September.
Not in September. To do a bang up job on the next focus workshop when Donna schedules it, and I will just be there.
Yeah.
We're going to take August off.
Nice.
We're not going to do the Monday main event. We're going to have probably replays of some of the favorite Monday main events. But we won't be doing live Monday main events just because we need to recharge our batteries and enjoy a bit of the summer and work in my garden and come back recharged in September. So
does that mean today is the last one for a couple weeks?
Yeah, Donna. Yeah, because next week is August.
Unless the focus team wants to do something.
Yeah, I mean, the focus team might step up and do some things. Donna will be working on that part of it, but there'll be material to listen to. It just may not be live. Well, it won't be. It won't be me live doing new stuff. So if everybody's okay with that, I need a bit of a break and a recharge. So focus workshops are coming September or maybe a little bit later.
No, not September.
Not September, right? I want to get going. Slaps my wrist. Okay, it's not September. Not going to be September. But it is going to be before the end of the year, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to add a whole bunch of new material, new documents, new approaches, and a whole bunch more experience of the focus team in what they've learned. And I hope a whole bunch of new stories from students who have put creative strategies into play and purchased properties and can help us and tell us about that. So
right on.
That's it. That's it for tonight. So on that note, folks, thanks for showing up and listening, giving us a listen. And Donna will keep you all advised about the details of everything we've just talked about And I'll just leave it at that because
you don't.
I'm not very good on the details. Donna's much better than me. All right, everyone. We'll say goodbye and thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.